snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So today I am going to be starting a new series. As you guys can see, I have a different background behind me. I'm back at uni, but I've rearranged my wall and I am starting a new term, so I want to start something new on my channel as well. I've been thinking about doing this for a little while, and the thing that I want to do is cover chat. I'm not sure if that's a very catchy name, so definitely give me suggestions if you have suggestions of what it could be called. But for the moment I'm just going to stick with cover chat, and let me know if you do like that and think that that is a good title. Basically we're going to talk about book covers, because book covers are the sort of thing that I really absolutely love when I'm buying a book. And although people say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, a lot of people do, and I know that I am guilty of not picking up a book because of its cover, or only picking up a book because of its cover. I really just wanted to highlight to you guys sort of all the different covers that we have for certain books, and the way that different countries have different covers. Books that are in the same series, sometimes they change the cover halfway through. Just anything to do with covers is what I want to be talking about on this kind of show, which I'm going to try and do weekly if possible, fingers crossed. It depends on uni work, but definitely I'm going to try and do it weekly. Definitely leave me all of your suggestions after watching this episode. Anything you want to see me talk about, anything you want to suggest, ideas, concepts, whatever you guys can think of and whatever you guys want. Definitely let me know so that I can then perhaps incorporate it into the next episode, which hopefully will be sometime next week. But enough talking. So basically what I'm going to do is just tell you guys about some different covers, and you guys can vote on whether you would buy them or not. I'm going to tell you whether I would buy them based off the cover, and we can just have a chat about the covers, because I'm really excited for this new project and I hope that you guys enjoy it.
I'm a graphic design student and I love talking about art and design, so cover art is just like a blend of my love of reading and my love of graphics in one, so I'm really excited about this project and I hope that you guys are too.
So the book that I really want to start this cover chat discussion series that I am going to be doing on is Elantris, because Elantris by Sanderson it holds a very special place in my heart, and it's one of my favourite books. I definitely want to make you guys aware of it if you aren't already. It's a standalone book. It's set in a fantastical world, and there are many different lands and many different people, and there is this part of the world which is called Elantris, and Elantris was a prosperous town, very rich, very powerful, and it was a magical town where all these people with super intense magical powers would congregate, and it used to be the lushest and most beautiful town. Unfortunately, in recent years, such as when we start the novel, the town of Elantris has actually been taken over by a kind of disease type of thing, and we really don't know very much about it. Actually, the land has been kind of sucked dry of the power has run out, and the people who used to be big magical magicians, they no longer have any power to do anything. And a lot of people are actually very, very scared of the people who are in Elantris, because they have very decayed features and they look very thin and emaciated and just very, very scary. So the storyline follows two main people, and that is Raoden and Serene, who are both royalty. One is a prince and one is a princess, and they basically are supposed to unite their two countries together. But basically the prince, Raoden, suddenly gets lost and vanishes, and it's all about where he's gone and what happens to him. And of course Elantris comes into the story in a very big way, and it is a brilliant standalone. I cannot recommend it more highly to you. It is the book that got me into Sanderson, and I absolutely adore it, so I would definitely recommend it, and I gave it a 5-star rating. It's brilliant. I probably read it when I was about 17. It's a brilliant fantasy and I cannot recommend it more. So definitely check it out. The first publication of Elantris was actually from Tor Books, and Tor Books published this story in the mass market paperback edition, which is like this. So the mass market paperback edition is actually a green tint across the whole of the book cover. A lot of the Elantris covers actually do contain a figure or multiple figures with architecture that looks very interesting and kind of applies to the culture of wherever it is. The things that I do really like about this cover are the kind of blobs of white light, which are kind of like globes of magic. They look really exciting and they just kind of shine out of the page at you, which is very, very beautiful. And they highlight the magical aspect of the story, which the rest of the cover kind of is a little bit more creepy. So the architecture which is included on the cover is very futuristic and very high, very steep, very long, very elongated and tall. It's almost like a space vibe about it, which is very interesting because there's not really any reference to a space vibe in the story. But I really like the architecture just for its individuality and the way that it's very different to a lot of modern architecture or Gothic architecture, kind of the very generic stereotypes of architecture. It's very different to that, and very swooping, and it kind of looks very menacing, which the city of Elantris is supposed to do. So that, I think, fulfills the story and matches really well with the story. The figures themselves actually are not that interesting to me. They're a bit boring, they're a bit two-dimensional, they don't really look realistic, but they're also not completely characterised, so it's very strange to look at them. And they're actually turned away from one another, which is very strange because normally you would imagine that they would be looking towards one another. I'm not sure why they've done that, but I think that's definitely an interesting quirk to this cover. But on the whole, I would say that this cover is decent. It's not too bad. A lot of mass paperback editions are actually very dull or very boring, and this one does slightly fall into that trap with the typography. The typography doesn't really work on this cover in my opinion. I feel like the Brandon Sanderson is a little bit too sci-fi rather than actually fantasy, which I consider to be a lot more elegant than sci-fi, which is a lot more techy. I feel like the writing of Brandon Sanderson's name is actually very technological and sort of very computer generated. It looks very computer generated rather than a free-flowing, expressive type. The typeface which has been used for Elantris is the opposite. It's very flowy, very fluid, and it all matches together really nicely. I also love the way that the T is actually above the other letters, because I think that that is a really lovely way of doing a composition, and the whole of the image just works really well together. So on the whole, I would say that it was a decent cover. I would probably pick it up, in all honesty, because it's not that bad. It's not awful, but it's definitely not one of my favourite covers, and I definitely wouldn't pick it up if it was next to, for example, the UK edition, which is my favourite cover. The UK edition is actually illustrated by Sam Green, who is a really, really wonderful illustrator and who has illustrated nearly all, or maybe even all, of Brandon Sanderson's books in the UK. And his work is astonishing. I love it personally, and I'm sure that you guys can appreciate it even if you don't love it. So the UK cover basically has a white background and is very similar to the rest of the books which Sam Green has illustrated for Brandon Sanderson. They all tend to have a white backdrop, and then they tend to have an architectural building or some sort of drawing with architecture, and then maybe occasionally it has figures as well. This one, of course, is a very Gothic feeling. The towers are steeped, which is very interesting, and it's very tall, which is a sign of Gothic. The arched windows, again, very Gothic in their styling and their feeling. However, the kind of misty swirliness that is going on with the black shadow and the green shadows, they kind of add a fantastical feeling, and the way that the building is not actually on a landscape or on the ground adds a very, very fantastical, floaty, vibrant feeling, in my opinion. There is a vibe of weightlessness that comes from this cover, and it makes it all that more interesting and kind of gives the impression of Elantris being more separated from the rest of the society, but also makes it really intriguing to look at. I absolutely love the rendering of the pencil, which you can see in the background. It's probably been digitally edited as well, but I love that you can see the pencil from underneath shining through, and I think that that is a really lovely touch, so highly appreciate that, and I definitely think that this book is brilliantly designed. Would I buy this book? Yes, I bought this book. It was the first Brandon Sanderson book I ever bought, and I loved it, and I would highly recommend it, and I still have it on my shelf at home, and it's brilliant, and I just cannot recommend it more highly to you guys, so definitely check it out. Now we're going to get into some more interesting covers, because these are the foreign covers, which are really different, some of them, and some of them are just plain weird, so let's get started on that. So first we have a German cover. The German cover is published by Hein Taschenberg, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and this one contains 912 pages. Would I buy this? Probably. I do like the wispiness. Again, it's got elements which kind of remind me of Sam Green's work, so maybe that is why I like it. It's a very pencil-based design. the warrior who is in the lower corner. He reminds me a lot of Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, which is a painting by Caspar David Friedrich, who is actually a German artist. Probably that's why the reference is there. And I really do like the positioning of this character. I think it's very eye-catching, and the flag that goes across is very, very eye-catching as well. It draws you into the story and it makes you look into the distance towards Elantris and imagine what it could be like in there. I'm not so sure about the kind of Viking horns on the helmet. I'm not sure what they're for. I don't remember a reference to them, but maybe there is. But on the whole, I would say it's a nice cover. I do like the combination of the blue and the pencil. I think that the colour scheme is very nice, and the fact that they have used the same lettering on the Brandon Sanderson as the UK one is very nice. But the Elantris is a little bit plain. I think that they could have done something a little bit bigger or bolder, or maybe a little bit taller and sleeker to kind of give it a more fantastical feeling. But let me know what you guys think of this cover. This cover is also the same for the Portuguese, but the Portuguese cover, which is published by Leia, actually has red tints on it, which is a bit unusual. So they've basically just taken the same cover and they've added their own colour of red on top of it, on the flag and on the lettering, which has been changed. The lettering is much cooler on this one and much sleeker, I feel. And the kind of shadow or light around the edges of the lettering makes it so much more inviting and just gives a nicer vibe to the whole cover, I think. So I definitely prefer the Portuguese cover, but I would probably buy both of them because they are nice covers and the cover art is very, very exciting and just looks really nice. If it's interesting and it makes you think about what this story could be about before you go on to read the blurb, I think that's a really good thing to have in a cover. Then we have another German cover. This, I'm not sure if this is like one of them is the paperback and one is the hardback. I couldn't really find out that much information. But this is another German cover and it is again published by the same publishing company. This one has 896 pages and it's actually a really interesting cover because there's a lot of elements that all work really well together, and I definitely think that this is a top-notch cover and I wouldn't really change much about it. So we have the red lettering, which is bold and vibrant and is very clear about who is the author. Then we have the background, which is a kind of darkish grey colour, which is really a lovely tone in my opinion. I think that the muted greys and the blue is very, very minimalist and very subtle, but it has a little bit of warmth to it as well, which is really inviting. Then we have the pattern, which is kind of like a big astrological grid maybe, and it's got the star signs around the outside, and it's kind of also like a maze, so it's very, very symbolistic and very interesting and enticing. It makes you think about what this could be about, and it definitely piques my interest, so to speak. The buildings, which are focused on in the middle with the central circle, are very gothic and very silhouetted. You can't see very much of them. There is a little hint of them at the bottom, but actually you see very little of them, and they're really, really cool. Very tall, very steep. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Hogwarts, which I love, so definitely cool. And it just looks really creepy and interesting and kind of cut off again, which is part of the story, so I like that. And then finally, the Elantris at the bottom. The E of the Elantris is very calligraphic and it's very reminiscent of calligraphy. I don't know if it is actually based off of a real calligraphic letter, but actually it looks really cool. And the effect of that E being just that little bit bigger and having a little bit of calligraphy makes it so interesting and just draws your eye to that instantly. So that is a really lovely quirk of the cover. I would definitely buy this. I think it's beautiful and I would love to own this edition if it was in English. I don't know if it is or not. Next we have the Czech cover, and the Czech cover is actually very different to all of the other covers. It does contain architecture, which is beautiful. The architecture and the detail of the architecture on this cover is absolutely stunning. You can literally see all of the patterns on the stonework, which is absolutely gorgeous, and the whole vibe of the building is just very serene, very peaceful, very similar to a cathedral, which I think is really interesting and very, very enticing as always. The kind of rainbow spectrum, I'm not sure if I like it or not. I haven't really decided.
And I'm a bit confused by it because it's nice, but it's interesting as well. I'm not sure what to feel about it, but
at least it's bright and it's vibrant and it draws your attention, so I suppose that is a good thing. But maybe it is a little bit too much colour kind of blaring into your face and that's not always what you want. I really like the gargoyle which has been added into the side because I think that that's a really nice touch to have these extra features, and I do like the figures. I think that the female figure is actually very believable because she's got her arms spread wide holding out her cloak, and she does look like a kind of princess, which she's meant to be. And then we have the male figure by her side who is actually looking quite sickly and greenish in his skin tone, which is interesting because that kind of relates to the story, but I'm not going to tell you how. And then he has this kind of light which is next to him, so that's really interesting as well. Again, that harks back to the magic which we know is in the story, so I definitely think that this cover is really, really pretty and really interesting, and definitely it's a good cover for the book. I would change maybe the colour scheme, and I would definitely change the colours of the typography because I think the orange just doesn't work very well, and maybe also make the lettering a little bit more bold because the lettering is nice. It doesn't make that much of a statement, which is what I want it to do, and I want it to draw me in and capture me and just make me interested. So I definitely think that that should stand out more. I would say that the cover is a really nice one, and I would probably still buy this cover, so yeah. Next we come to the Chinese cover. The Chinese cover is actually one of my favourites. When I was looking into all of these covers, I saw the Chinese one and I instantly fell in love with it because it is so beautiful. The picture which is in the background is stunning. The gradients of the greens and turquoise to the bright light is absolutely gorgeous, and I cannot even explain how much I love this cover. I wish I had it.
But I don't read Chinese, so it would be a bit pointless.
But it is so beautiful, and I would put that picture on my wall just as a painting. Like, it doesn't have to be a book cover, it can just be a painting. It's so beautiful, so really, really well realised. And I just think that the kind of swirl of the steeple is just very enticing, very beautiful, and very serene. And I do like that it's kind of on a hill away from everything else, and that there's birds flying around, and it's just this really lonely and isolated vibe, which is actually very beautiful as well, and that is kind of the vibe that I got when I was reading the book, so I think that it works very, very well for the story. Then we have the typography of Elantris and the Chinese symbols for, I assume, Brandon Sanderson, which are in this kind of beveled or raised effect, metallic raised effect, and I think that that is absolutely gorgeous. The silver offsets the whites behind it so beautifully, and it just works absolutely so well. And the lettering is really fresh, really sleek, very individual and very unique, very different to anything we have on this kind of western side of the world. It's very, very Asian influenced, and I love that. It's really, really different and really cool. So on the whole, I would say that this cover is absolutely gorgeous, and I would not change any of it except make it into English, because then I would buy it and I would love it to be on my shelf because it's beautiful. So next we have the Japanese covers, and there are actually 2 Japanese covers, which is really cool. I'm not sure if that is to appeal to like a guy and a girl, or if they have divided the book into half. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to talk about both of them because I found both of them, so why not talk about both of them? So the Japanese covers, you can definitely see influences from anime and manga because they are really stylised, highly stylised. The characters are very two-dimensional, but they're very elongated, very long, very slim and very defined. They both have elements of like long wispy clothes and very flowing hair which just goes down the body. Again, this harks back to the Japanese manga influence, and on the whole it's very, very stylised, but I do like them. I think that they are really pretty. The architecture behind them is really different, very different to the Gothic styles of the western side of the world, and it's actually a very Asian style with the sort of roofs that do that, because that's really different and really cool. And I like that. I think that it's a very mystical vibe, but I'm not sure if it would be that mystical to Japanese people.
Maybe it would be more interesting to have a Gothic building on a Japanese cover because that would be more foreign. I don't know, but to me it's really cool.
And I love the architecture because it's kind of floating behind them. It's not grounded. Again, I've already said I think that it's really nice that it's floating and kind of isolated because that harks back to the story. And the characters just being on top is a very interesting way of doing a character. I like that there is a kind of background and then a character, and then behind that is whiteness, so it doesn't detract from the simplicity. It looks like a very kind of simple Japanese motif in the middle, And then you have the Elantris, which is across the middle. The version with the male on it is kind of very muted tones, very dull watercolours, very kind of grey in its tone, which is interesting because then you have this blaring purple across the middle, and I know that that is an influence of Japanese manga and that is a very common way of doing things, but I hate it. I don't think that the purple works. I think it's vibrant for sure, but I'm not sure that it balances the harmony going on behind. I think that the drawing behind is very soft and loose and flowing, and I think that the jagged typeface and the blaring purple just don't work. It's just too much going on in front. But I do like the design behind it, so I would probably still buy this book. I would probably think it was a manga though. I wouldn't buy it thinking it was a novel, so I'm not sure if it is a manga over there. Maybe it is, I don't know. Then we have the girl version, which is actually very summery and very vibrant in the tones that are used. It's very sort of orange, greens, yellows, and then behind we have a kind of green tinge across all of the architecture, which is again really beautifully rendered. And I do probably prefer the female version a lot more, so maybe it is targeted that way to females. Although the typeface is exactly the same, the orange colour of the lettering actually softens the jagged outline, and it does tend to work a lot better on that one than on the other one. So I do like both of them, but I would be much more likely to pick up the girl version myself. Next we have the Turkish design, which is actually super different to everything else. As you can see, it's really, really plain and quite dull. It's a kind of brownish, purplish, deep colour, which is nice. It's not a horrible colour, but it's very plain. It's not vibrant, it's not attractive. And then we have this kind of castle motif on the middle. I'm not sure what it's meant to be, but to me it kind of represents a castle or something like that. It looks very medieval in its layout, and I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but actually I don't feel like it really works. I think from a minimalist point of view and a modernist point of view, it is a very nice cover. It's a very sleek, very ordered and very balanced design, but for this story I just don't think it has enough clues about what it is, and I don't think that it attracts the right crowd, because I feel like
you might go into that book thinking it's a classic, or you might go into that book thinking it's about medieval castles.
When actually it's really not. It's a fantasy, it's a high fantasy, and it's absolutely the opposite of what this cover represents to me. To me it's a very dull, classic, simple design, whereas actually this story is very complex, it's very exciting, very passionate and vibrant, and just a lot of stuff happens. So I'm not sure about this cover, and I definitely wouldn't pick it up if I saw it, because I would not think that a story like this would be contained within that sort of cover. Let me know your thoughts on this cover and what you think of it. I personally do not like it and do not think it fits at all, but I want to hear what you guys think of all of these covers. Definitely let me know if you would buy them and which ones you like most and which ones you don't like, because I'm really interested to hear your guys' opinion. So next we have the audiobook cover, which is actually published by Recorded Books and contains 24 CDs. I hate this cover. I would have to say that this is my least liked cover of all of them. I think it's horrible.
I think that the design of it is absolutely terrible, and I just would never pick it up in a million years. Even if I was told that it's a brilliant story, I'm not sure I would still pick it up, because it's just horrible, and I don't like it at all.
So first off we have this really kind of creepy face at the bottom, which is very zoomed in. It's only this top portion which we see, and then there's a blanked out colour on one of the eyes. It looks very creepy. It reminds me a lot of the White Walkers in George R.R. Martin's books, which is kind of a lot creepier and darker than I imagine the emaciated and frail people of Elantris. So it's very interesting that they would choose to put a kind of warrior creature on the front, because I really don't imagine it like that at all. I don't know where they came up with that idea from. Above the face we then have this kind of strip of a kind of cathedral and all of the arches within that cathedral, which is a blue tint on it. I do really like that picture. I think that if they had just used that picture it might have been a lot more enticing than with this horrible face kind of underneath. The way that they're just on top of one another and they're not even kind of faded into one another or merged together in some way, it just looks like a really bad Photoshop job gone wrong, and I just do not like it at all.
From a designer's point of view, it is an atrocity, an absolute atrocity. The colour of the yellow Elantris is blazingly horrible. It's just blaringly horrible. It screams out of the cover at you, but it doesn't attract you, it just makes you want to run away. It's horrible. And then there is this kind of green, turquoisey darkness behind that, which, again, really weird. I'm not sure why it's been included, but it looks disastrous.
Oh, and then finally we have the Brandon Sanderson lettering below, which is actually okay and would have been a lot nicer if it had been more uniform throughout and just everything had been more thought about. It looks like someone threw all of these elements together in a 2-minute job in Photoshop, and I really don't like it. I think that it is absolutely horrible and there is no way that I would ever buy it. So it's really strange that I actually do own a copy of that book and it looks nothing like that, thank goodness. So those are all of the covers that I'm going to talk about for Elantris. There are other covers, of course. I'm not going to cover all of the different ones, but those are the ones that I picked out to talk about. Definitely let me know your thoughts on all of them. I think that there are definitely some of them which are a lot nicer and a lot more appealing to a broader market than others. And I definitely feel like a lot of people will have a lot of different views, so I'm really interested to hear if you guys like the same ones that I do, or if you don't. I'm really eager to hear about it, and I really want to know what you guys think about these covers.
Would you buy them? Would you not? Would you throw them in a bin? Would you hide them behind another book in a bookshop because they're so horrible? I think I would with the audiobook, it looked disgusting.
Also, please let me know some suggestions of what you want to see me talk about next, whether you want to see me review a whole series and all the different covers, or if you want to see more like this where I just choose one book and then do all the different covers around the world. Let me know what you guys think of this series and what you hope to see from it in the future. If you have a favourite book that you think I should know about and think I should do the covers of, definitely let me know, and I'm really excited to just talk to you guys more about this. I am passionate about covers, I don't know if you can tell, but I really do love discussing them and I really do love hearing what you guys have to say about them. So please, please, please do let me know your thoughts down below and I will definitely reply to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you want to see in the next one and I will see you very soon. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the